So just as we bring in an Italian to bring us some glass to the midfield, that was terrible. It looks like the search for a more attacking midfielder in James Maddison that feels like it's gone on forever. Eddie Howe, clearly a big fan. The Ross and Rachel, friends, will they, won't they sort of saga. That's what it feels like anyway now across 3 windows, I want to say. It looks like it's finally over. He's decided to move to Tottenham. It was being rumoured last week that he preferred them. Now it looks like this is picking up pace and the James Maddison saga is over. But a lot of people are saying it's just because he wants to live in London, that's why he's chose Tottenham. I think there's more to this story that I'm going to talk about in this video, and we're going to very briefly discuss where does Eddie Howe go next. It's all coming up, Newcastle fans, so of course you know what to do. A little favour and stick around. Welcome back to another cheeky old video on Black and White Banter, you lovely Newcastle fans. Now, before we dive into this James Maddison business, as I said at the start of this video, I want you to do me a favour. I want you to drop down and give me a little likey-likey-loo, just one of these lovely thumbs. Well, a bit more lovely than that one. I think I need to do my nails. Do that now, because even if you weren't supposed to be watching this video, it doesn't take you much effort to click like. If you were looking for a cooking video, you may as well stick around. You might learn something. You might even become a Newcastle fan from watching this video. This is my face. This is what I do on the regular. Get me across Black and White Banter on all social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Content on there every day, which can I just say is very different to what I post on here. Very, very different being an understatement. But the following across all of the socials is incredible. And before I do dive into this video, I also want to say YouTube subscribers now are on a very, very quick curve, which is amazing because there's been so many times when you're putting so much effort into YouTube and you're not getting much back in views or anything, it can be a bit demotivating. Now we've just gone over 2,000. I'm actually in 2,136, I think, as I make this video. To think 2,000 people have now tuned in on YouTube is incredible. And some of the comments that people are leaving on videos now, I just want anyone who goes through the effort to write nice things to know that it's massively appreciated. I've had lovely comments about people seeing this channel grow crazy in the next couple of years. People loving my content across all other socials. Just really nice comments from people who don't have to do it, but they do. Absolutely love them. They mean the world to me. So thank you very much. So yeah, whack that like, whack that subscribe. So, James Maddison. It's gone on for a long time now, hasn't it? You're probably sick of it. I'm sick of it. I think even my mum, when I catch up with her on the phone, she's sick of hearing the name James Maddison. It's gone on for a long time, but I've always had faith in Eddie Howe, anyone Eddie Howe really wants. And clearly Eddie Howe sees a player in James Maddison. And from a personal point of view, I see a player in James Maddison. So I'm going to be very blunt and honest. I'm disappointed with how this saga has gone. You only have to look at James Maddison's record in the last 3 years. Consistent double figures on goals, consistent double figures on assists, set piece taker, a shining light if you want to look at his stats in a team that got relegated and were piss poor last season. And he's a talented boy, proven in the Premier League, so you don't have to worry about that. And he would have offered us something very, very different to Longstaff, Joe Linton, Willock or Bruno. Massively different in my opinion. And Tonali, of course, he's in that mix now. So I'm disappointed with this one. And I think him not wanting to come to Newcastle and that being rumoured last week did spark a huge amount of Newcastle fans suddenly calling James Maddison worse than shit. Overrated, poor attitude, doesn't fit in our system. I don't buy it sometimes, and I know what Newcastle fans, as all football fans are like, and I love it. We are proud as punch. If someone doesn't like Newcastle City Centre, you're racking your brain to why, because we love it. If someone doesn't want to play here, we get on their backs. We stand up for our own players and management and our own fans through thick and thin. We are a proud supporter base. So for fans to suddenly see that James Maddison is preferring to move down south, naturally I think that makes the saltiness kick in, like you've just, you know when someone leaves the lid unscrewed on the salt shaker and it goes all over your food. That's what I think has blurred Newcastle fans' opinions on him in the last week. Because he is a good player. You don't get the stats that James Maddison has had in the last 3 years without being a good footballer. You really, really don't. So I haven't bought into some of the criticism I've seen of him as a player in the last week. But I do understand that if you do not want to come to this exciting project and you would rather go to Tottenham, where in my opinion they are a club massively taking a gamble on the man from Celtic, their new coach, a squad that could be losing their main man in Harry Kane. There's a lot going on in Tottenham, and there's not much structure, I don't think, to what goes on. I'm not a Daniel Levy fan, I never have been. He's not a fan of us. You can do that for me as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Levy. And if James Maddison, aside from anything else, doesn't want to come and see that beautiful thing on his shirt, then that's up to him. That's up to him. But there are lots of factors why people are talking about why he wants to go to Tottenham. The main one being that he wants to live in London. That's a stigma I think we do attach to players who are desperate to go down south. Because London, as much as it pains me to admit it, for someone, normally I would say it for overseas players if I'm being totally honest, but for a lot of people it is the beacon of light in the UK. Especially when a player is coming from overseas, obviously not in James Maddison's case. It's the hub, it's where everything's happening, it's where everything's... I'm not a London fan, I won't claim to be. I'm impressed by it, how you feel like you're stepping into a different world sometimes when you go to certain parts of London, but generally speaking, I'm a north lad, northeast lad, always will be. Always have been, always will be. People are friendlier, drinks are cheaper, just better. And you don't get football supporters like you do in the northeast, in my opinion. So I think there's more to this, and I'm going to talk about these factors that I think. The first one for me, the location thing. James Maddison has just had a beautiful house renovated, the lucky bastard, pardon the French, in Nottinghamshire. Nottinghamshire is 2.5 hours away from Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on a map, driving. I do not think James Maddison is going to up sticks and move down London. It's a huge house he has. That's where he's settled. That's where he's based. I don't think the living situation is the huge factor in this move. I don't, especially with him already being English. If he wanted to live in London when he played for Leicester, he could have. He really could have. It wouldn't have been an ideal commute, but you get players travelling for training and staying in hotels and whatnot all the time. The factors for me, first and foremost, big one, and this is all my opinion, first team football. Now, James Maddison, if we are led to believe we were still in the race for him and he's chose not to join us rather than us stopping our interest in him, you look at Newcastle United's midfield going into next season. Bruno, Longstaff, Tonali, Willock, Joe Linton, Maximin, Isak, Wilson, Gordon, Murphy, Almiron. That's a lot of players for James Maddison to contest with across a long season where he might be seeing himself involved in some sort of squad rotation. Flip that to Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur's starting 11 in their last game of the season when they battered Leeds and relegated them was Skip and Bissouma in central midfield. James Maddison, for me, and if for any reason a Tottenham Hotspur fan is watching this video, walks into their midfield with a blindfold on for me going into next year. And that's why they're wanting to spend all this money on him, which we'll touch on in a second. And I think that's a big factor. James Maddison seems an ego player. He does. He's got the slick back hair. He has a bit of an attitude when he's on the pitch. That's just a persona. That's all I'm basing that off. Could be an absolutely lovely guy who I'd want to go to for a pint with if I met him in person. Who knows? But he seems like an ego player. And why wouldn't you be? Like I say, he's had a good couple of years. He wants guarantees of first team football. I'm not sure whether he sees that at Newcastle. That's one factor. The second factor, wages. It's been reported that James Maddison is going to be paid anywhere between 160 and 200 grand a week from Tottenham Hotspur. Our highest paid player, Bruno, we are trying to negotiate a contract for him for that to be even bigger. James Maddison's deal would blow that out of the water. I do not think our hierarchy are willing to pay or match what Tottenham want to offer him per week. So if James Maddison is money motivated, as players are more and more in this modern day and age, as Saudi Arabia has proved, that might be another factor in him wanting to go there. And when it comes to money, we all get very bitter when players want to move for it. We don't know how our minds will be swayed. But hey, I'm sure that the package we were going to be offering was well in the hundreds. So I see both sides to that one. I really, really do. So that's the second factor. The third factor, the transfer fee. It looks like James Maddison is going to be costing Tottenham anywhere between 50 and 60 million pounds. For a player who only has 1 year on his contract, Leicester are playing some serious fucking hardball for that guy. Ridiculous, really, with a year left on his contract. I don't think Newcastle saw that as a fair deal. I don't think Dan Ashworth and Mr. Eales and Co. and Mr. Mairdad and Mr. Amanda, not Mr. Amanda, Mrs. Staveley would see that as good business from a relegated side with 1 year left on his contract. Bearing in mind, you also then chuck on a huge wage structure. That's a lot of money. That is an incredible amount of money for James Maddison. So I think that's another part of the club side, Newcastle side, not being as willing to go anywhere near what Tottenham are wanting to offer. Another factor in this is, I think, with those two factors in mind, with regards to transfer fee and also with regards to the wage structure, we are trying to build a squad this summer. And although Eddie Howe loves the man, I do wonder whether, all things considered, with not many assets to sell this summer, not going to talk about Maximin on that one because that's a different video for a different day, I wonder whether that money could be spent across maybe two players, with a left back in mind, with, I've got no doubt, a winger in mind. There's lots of Newcastle fans would like to see another centre back, another forward to go with Mr. Wilson and Isak. I just wonder whether, with Tonali costing us 55 million, whether that outlay of cash was another factor why it just didn't sound that appealing. I think it's an accumulation of them things, if I'm being totally honest with you. I don't buy it's just the fact that James Maddison wants to live in London. I think the club have pulled back based off what Tottenham are willing to pay, salary and fee to Leicester. I think James Maddison's got reservations about whether he can get in this Newcastle team week in, week out, guaranteed. And I also think we are always looking elsewhere. Now that leads me on to where we should go now. I am disappointed James Maddison hasn't worked out, but of course there's lots of talk of Mr. Schlabozlai, and I know I'm probably saying that wrong, so just chill out, people in the comments, if I've battered the bloke. I'm sure he's not watching this video. He's next on my list to do my homework to. Anyone who watches my videos knows I do like to read my scouting reports. I do like to watch my video content and listen to journalists and reporters who follow that team in Red Bull Leipzig on the daily, on the weekly. It is being reported that he is now the focus of our attention. Sky Sports are reporting it. A couple of newspapers, a couple of respected journalists on Twitter are reporting it. He's not the same player as James Maddison as far as I understand. He is certainly someone who could operate on the wings a bit more, which I quite like the sound of. But where would you like to go? You know, James Maddison was very unique in terms of he's a Roman centre-attacking midfielder. A centre-attacking midfielder in our system with Bruno, Tonali, Joe Linton and Willock is a difficult one to figure out. It offers us a different dimension, but also makes me wonder what Eddie Howe had up his sleeve in terms of formation. Because James Maddison would certainly have to... I see James Maddison as the player to almost be the front of a diamond to a degree, and that isn't how we really operate. We are a go forward as one, sort of defend as one. That two banks of three has worked so well for Eddie Howe, and he does mix that up. Of course he does. But I wondered what his thinking was with James Maddison, and Schlabozlai, as far as I understand, is very different in terms of the player he is. Yes, he can operate across that front line. Yes, he likes a shot. Yes, he's a playmaker. But very, very different players. So two different sort of profiles there on two footballers. It's going to be interesting to see where we go with this, because apart from Schlabozlai, Newcastle are not being linked with too many players similar to the James Maddison mould. And that's going to change in the next couple of weeks. And if you don't already know, I'm not the guy who's going to do a video on every single one. But let's see how this develops. This transfer window is finally exciting as a Newcastle fan after 14 years of basically just being called the summer and not the transfer window. Let's see where this one progresses. Newcastle fans, let me know your thoughts on James Maddison. Are you disappointed, or are you still in that club that I see a lot of people saying that you know, if he doesn't want to play for the club, then crack on? And I'm very much with you on that one. And who do you think, maybe anyone watching this video has an idea of where you'd like to see us go? Would you go down the route of the same position, or do you think our midfield's maybe okay? Let me know in the comments. And all I want to finish this video by saying is, look, James, if you don't want Greg's pasties on tap, if you don't want Newcastle Brown Ale ice cold with a half glass, a schooner, if you will, if you don't want this beautiful badge on this beautiful shirt week in, week out, if you prefer to just be looking forward to Carabao Cup trips to Accrington Stanley rather than trips to Real Madrid at the Bernabeu, crack on, Mr. Maddison, crack on. We've got bigger fish to fry. We'll probably find that bigger fish, and I'm sure he'll smash it. And I'd hate to think that in a year's time, you maybe regret your decision. Who knows? Newcastle fans, I'll see you on the next video. If you've stuck around this long, whack that like, whack that subscribe. And as always, away the lads!